I must say, it was probably without reading this time. It's like 100 pages. It was, you know, we're working on it. Well,
right, we'll get things underway. So good morning, everybody. Warm welcome to councillors, staff, and anyone online, including media and members of the public. So this is the council meeting today. We're going to be starting, and we've just got to start with apologies. So we do have apologies from councillors Wolstein, Tivendale and Halaleli. Someone like to move we accept those apologies. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Hopkins. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
And against, that's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? There are none. Okay. We are supposed to have someone for public forum who isn't here as yet. So, oh, she is. Oh, okay. Yeah, she. So, Christine Dorsey is here. Christine's been appointed to a new role of coordinator for neighbourhood support, I think it's called. So she's just coming in to let us know about that that role and make sure that we're fully aware of what she wants to achieve in her time there. So welcome, Christine. So we've just started our meeting and done a brief introduction of you. So just when you're ready, just push the microphone button and away you go.
Hello. Right, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me along to talk to you about neighbourhood support. Just to start off, I would like to acknowledge the council's community development team because they have been working probably for 2 years now to get neighbourhood support up and running in town. And so between them and Lois Scott of Otago Neighbourhood Support, it's all come to fruition, which is really great. So I've been in the role for 3 weeks. I'm employed directly by Otago Neighbourhood Support and I work 20 hours out of the business hive. So neighbourhood support, just for a wee bit of history, you probably know all about the old neighbourhood watch that was about years ago. It was set up in the 1970s. And it was rolled out by the police. And I was talking with Derek Beveridge yesterday. He was the police officer that was assigned to roll it out. So then in the 1990s, they changed the face of neighbourhood support to be more of neighbourhood watch, to be more of neighbourhood support as times were changing. And it stuck with that. And I guess right now, the idea of supporting one another is more important than all, really. So the police are still very much invested in it. So they invest quite a lot of money in neighbourhood support because they believe that it does work to reduce crime in communities. So the main partners are the police, civil defence and fire and emergency. So I'm really happy to say that in our town, the police are really behind it, as is civil defence. And I've still got to make connections with fire and emergency, but I would assume that they would be the same. So we're really lucky to have that support and we'll be able to work as a team. So we have a memorandum of understanding with those 3 organisations. So information can be passed freely back and forward, which is very useful. So in terms of the whole neighbourhood support idea, it's based on wanting connected, safer and resilient communities, which I guess many organisations are actually working towards, and it's probably what everyone in our community ultimately wants. So I have a lot of freedom around running projects that might aid the development of those 3 things. But most people will probably think of neighbourhood support as getting streets signed up and connected and having the signs in their streets. So that certainly is a big part of it. People can definitely join up as a street group. So what I'm looking for is people who are willing to come forward and be street coordinators. and then I assist them to get everyone on the street on board if they would like to do so. And then really it's as much or as little as what any street wants to do. Like some people will have street barbecues and all the rest of it. Other people will just have a mechanism for connecting with each other. And my own street, it's kind of already been set up prior to me even getting this job. And we just have a WhatsApp chat group. And that's proved to be really helpful throughout COVID. Instead of asking your next door neighbour, can you please go and get me some milk? You can actually put a message on the WhatsApp chat and say, is anyone going to the supermarket today? Someone will respond. And we've used it for things like we had a mysterious car that no one quite knew who it belonged to. And that was really good to put that on the chat. And we had a lost dog that we could take a photograph of, put that on the chat. And it's just anything. If you're going overseas, we put that on the chat so other neighbours know it's not just the neighbour either side of you. So groups might be really small. People might just want to join up with the person either side of them. They might want to join up as an individual, and that is fine too. And when they join up, they get emails, they get information, they get a welcome pack with stickers to put on their window, on their letterbox, other information in the pack from fire and civil defence, police defence and civil defence. So we have all of that going on, which is really great. And I think I'm not telling you anything, but loneliness is more obvious than it ever has been before in terms of isolation. So I've been quite surprised on the interest that there's been already in these last couple of weeks. Like I've already had 13 people come forward just when I've been chatting casually to them, and they've been saying, yes, I want to do it in my street, so can you help me get it up and running? So there's definitely an appetite for it in our community, which is really great to see. So I'll go out and about and talk to groups, and I don't want to be the traveling salesperson. So it's really just a matter if people want it, then we do it. If they don't want it, then that's fine too. But a lady I was talking to the other day was an elderly lady, and she was saying since COVID, she only goes out twice a week, once to the supermarket, once to the library, and all her family's overseas. And so people like that are really keen on this idea, just so that they know who's who. And if people haven't met their neighbours, it's actually an easy idea to go and say, hey, we're setting up a neighbourhood support group. It's a reason to go and chat with them. So from the police perspective, when I went and talked to them last week, they were really happy with the idea because we can get information out through my channels in terms of I'll have everybody listed in a database, and if they come and say, hey, there's been quite a few burglaries along Taywood Street, can we put something out directly to the people in that street? So we're able to look it up and actually channel the information to exactly where it needs to go. So that's the kind of thing that we will be wanting to do. They said for them it could also be really helpful if they go to a sudden death and they can't figure out who's who in the contacts to make contact with, if they could ring me up and say, have you got a street group in that street? So there's lots of advantages for lots of different groups moving forward. And research does show that having signs in your street does reduce crime. But the police even said to me, actually, even if it didn't, and it gave people a feeling of greater safety, that's great. But the research does show that it definitely does lower crime as well. So it's a very streamlined organisation. Neighbourhood Support New Zealand doesn't have a lot of employees. There are currently 69 different towns and cities throughout New Zealand who run the program. Has been a bit slow to get going down the south. And I guess in the past, people have actually run it as volunteers, and that's hard to sustain, as we know. So, no, it's really good to have it up and running here. So I think that's probably all. I'd just also like to say thank you very much to the council, to Gary and Alex, who have given the go-ahead that the council can be involved in the putting up of signs on the power poles, because I'm not that flash at climbing ladders. So that's really very much appreciated. And we want them all to look good and be standardised. I'll be getting all the old signs that there are still a few around town. removed as well, so we can move forward on the new platform. So I think that's great. If anyone's got any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christine. And yeah, I think you're the person made for this job. So yeah, it's really good. And there's no doubt that a connected community is a strong community. So it is very important. Just go to Councillor King. If you just turn your microphone off, Christine.
Turn mine off.
Yep.
So just the right button again.
Yep.
Or the left.
Yeah, look, it's a really good thing, Christine. Do you have plans of the villages in the district and the rural areas?
Thought you might ask that. Absolutely, we do. We're trying to get some funding at the moment for a vehicle, which will be really good advertising, as well as enable us to get out to those areas. Very much so. Neighbourhood support has also been quite involved in the putting up of signs in rural areas about illegal hunting and things like that. So I have a lot of resources in that area, and very much so. I just had someone ask me the other day, oh, you're coming to Kura, are you doing things like that? So I will go into those small communities, and all the small police stations will also have neighbourhood support signs and information at them. But yeah, very much so, because it's really needed in rural areas, although possibly in farming areas, people are quite well connected anyway. But I think we want to do that right around the district. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, thank you very much, Christine. Thanks for coming in and telling us about it. And, you know, we'll certainly do what we can through our networks to promote it. And hopefully, you know, the response really from the community is so overwhelming that we need another one of you. But yeah, it is going to be an important job, and it really does deliver on what the council's wanting to do, which is create a really good, strong community. So all the very best to you, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, now move to item 4.1, public minutes of the council meeting held on the 10th of May. So I'd like to move their record. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Holding. Any comments? Councillor Hopkins?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Look, a correction and a suggestion. On page 9, first paragraph, 5th line, it reads references to the National Policy Statement on Urban Development to discuss with the implications will be. And I think the word with has to be what. And if I may, just carrying on page 15, I was a bit perplexed originally when I read it, because you've got resolution WDC 2022-050, and there's a thing about managing exotic forestation. And then underneath carried, it says, in keeping with his declaration of interest in agenda item 6.2, the chair to the side. I think, just for the purpose of minutes being kind of clearer and more obviously, you know, easily understood, that should be the second sentence in the paragraph underneath the headline, appointment of council trustee.
Yeah.
So it would read, the report is circulated, sought council's full trust, full stop, in keeping with. So I just make those two suggestions.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, that's carried. Thank you. Item 4.2, public minutes of the annual plan hearing held on 17th of May. So I'd like to move those. Councillor Hopkins.
I'll move.
Okay, moved and seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Hopkins, do you want to say something?
Yeah, look, just very quickly, from on page 25, 27, 28 and 29, there's a word in bold, repeated frequently, action. And in a number of instances, 5 or 6, there's nothing after it. One says action required, another says action for follow-up, and everything else is just action, but there is nothing. So my view is either we put something or we take the word action out.
Yeah, we'll just take those out of things that have been put in there to something needed to be done about them. But as far as I assume that action has been passed on to the respective officers.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that was for officers to take note of. I gave them a list of all the action points, and it was the easiest way to reference it. But I'm happy to take them out for the final record. But yes, they were useful for officers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page 29, we had a submission number 41, which was around a ratepayer rebate for Waitaki ratepayers camping up the Waitaki lakes. I've had further inquiries about that and just wondered where we are or where we're progressing that.
That was discussed. I had a bit of a conflict of interest in that one, so I didn't take too much part in that, but it wasn't put forward for any action. We did talk about some of the components of the fees, and that included the age of those considered who were children, who were adults, so raised that age to include to allow more offspring of campers to not be charged, and also bringing down the additional adult rate from $12.50 to $10. But yeah, I don't think officers took it from the conversation that there was a desire for any other change, but happy, Mr. Hope, for you to make any comment on that one.
Yeah, that was certainly the understanding of officers that, yeah, it was a suggestion we might look into it in the future, but there wasn't, I suppose, a call for action for the upcoming camping season. I think, as always, there's a number of complicating factors in relation to the camps. I think we've got the contract coming up in the reasonably near future, so I think that will prompt a review of all matters related to camping, and it'd be better to do a comprehensive review rather than sort of a one-off change.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Put it. Those in favour of those minutes being adopted, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. Thank you. Just moving on to item 5.1, my report. I will take it as read. Quite a few bits and pieces in there as we carry on business as usual, and at the same time getting into an election process and dealing with all the reforms and so on as well. We've got a couple of additions from the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Percival just on the conference. Some brief reports on their experience there. And that's probably the main things to just raise, but happy to take any questions or feedback. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. Look, first of all, I wish I'd been at the conference. Were it not for the dreaded Lurgia, it would have been. But reading Councillor Tabendale's speech, I actually felt quite proud. I mean, well, we did that. I genuinely felt a sort of a wee surge of purpose and satisfaction, quite seriously. But the question, I think, probably from me, is it, can you amplify just a wee bit on the carbon forestry group update? It seems to me, if I read what's happened recently, that the government's backing away from the kind of restrictions and limitations on exotic pure carbon forest plantings. Is that, which is concerning if it's true, but is it true? I'm just trying to get a fix on what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, basically they're calling for a bit of a delay to things. So I think it's taken as a positive in favour of better controls on carbon forestry around what counts and what doesn't count. They haven't gone to actually making that decision, but at least they're putting off the opposing position, which was to, basically not have the controls that we really want to see on permanent forestry and what constitutes carbon forestry, and in particular the problems that comes with monocultural planting of pine trees in land that actually isn't necessarily suitable for it and is actually taking production away from rural areas. So we need to keep pushing them on that, but it was seen to at least that they were not ploughing ahead and putting in place something that we weren't going to be happy with. Time will tell where they end up with though on that one. Councillor Thompson.
A very timely subject, Mr. Mayor. Another very productive property in Wahima has been sold into production forestry, and the jungle drums are now beating, saying that Oceana, who in fact own 12,000 hectares in Wahima, looking at the possibility of being able to put trees in to offset their carbon responsibility. So it's an ongoing issue that is going to cause us some angst for some time.
Indeed. Okay, Councillor Kingham.
Just change the topic. In your meetings as such, there's reference to podcast interviews with several people. Could you explain that to me, please? Because I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, it's kind of not directly related to my role as mayor, but it's something that Damien Goodser and I are doing, his initiative. But basically the opportunity just to talk to people who have got some relationship to our districts, and particularly North Otago, and looking at, things that people who have done something pretty awesome, or been involved in something, whether it's a building project of something significant, or they've done really well on the world stage or national stage. So yeah, the opportunity to talk to some of those people, get some of the backstories to what they've done and how they've done things. So yeah, there's been some really interesting people along the way, and I just put them in there because for me, one of the purposes of this is that while they're not as detailed as an oral history might be, they're still quite useful records to go into the archive and just have those stories sitting in there that people can listen to in the future.
So as a follow-up, can these be accessed or?
Yeah, so there's a Facebook page, but all of the podcasts are on a number of different platforms such as Spotify and so forth. So yeah, if you're on Facebook, you can go to the North Otago Legends page and go from there to the links to all of the different ones that we've done so far, which I think must be about 15 or so up to date. Yeah.
Have you done one with Councillor Percival on his visit to the local government conference?
No, it was a notable report though. So you never know. He might be one of the up and coming legends. Yes, Hopkins.
Just a quick question on the meetings. There's references to the visit of the UNESCO assessors, and I'm just curious to know, whether you or the chief executive has any advice or information as to when their report might be forthcoming, as based on the assessment of the geopark, or whether we qualify past the tests.
I believe they're making the decision in September.
I think they produced their report in September. I think a decision might be in October or November.
Okay. So yeah, it's still a wee way to go for that one. Is there anything else in my report? Okay, someone like to move or receive that? Councillor Holding, thank you. Councillor Thompson. All those in favour say aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you. Now on to item 6.1, recommendations from the Wahima Community Board from their meeting on the 4th of July. And just ask Mr. Hope if you would like to make any comments.
Yeah, so this was a matter brought to the community board's attention. It is an action we are required to take in terms of work that was undertaken in the last great effort to improve Haven Street, Meraki. In addition to the recommendation from the community board, officers have proposed some funding options which are disclosed under the revised officer recommendation. So it was really just looking through what funds are available that may be appropriate to fund this work, and highlighted 3 of them. Really, the alternative would be to sort of fully loan fund it to start with, and then sort out how we fund that loan as part of the next annual plan process. But these funds are available, and in the officer's view were appropriate to fund this project that we are required to undertake. So I'm happy to answer any questions, even if the answers may be somewhat limited about the technical aspects of the resource consent and work we are required to undertake.
Yeah, I would just note that Haven Street is currently closed as of yesterday due to some subsidence in the road there. The slip is very much active, and you know, this report isn't a day too soon. So any questions? Councillor Holding.
Just with the future water reforms coming up, do you think this will be a fit for purpose fix for the future?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, the water reforms really don't impact on how we. I think the solutions we're coming up with probably over any of these issues over the next 2 years, we're just coming up with the best solutions that are available. I think, you know, there are going to be long-term issues there that I think whoever is responsible for stormwater will need to contemplate.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, just in the interest of brevity, is a revised officer recommendation at the bottom of page 43, is that the one that we're effectively being asked to consider today? Because if it is, I'm happy to move it.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson. Okay, any speakers to that? What I'd suggest is that slight amendment, and that's really the this is a problem that's been exacerbated by a lot of traffic over the road, and you know, just it's got a lot of, has a lot of visitors and so on to the village. What I would like to see is probably the last part of that, a $50,000 loan to be funded from the Meraki amenity rate, that actually it becomes a funding from the district as a contribution from the overall district rather than just the people of Meraki. They already have high rates, as we know, and I think this is a problem that actually is more than so happy to suggest that to the mover and seconder to see whether they would be happy to amend their recommendation, their motion.
I get what you're saying. Essentially, it's a roading issue, and roading is district-wide. Well, roading is a contributing factor to the matter. We delete the words "to be funded from the Meraki amenity rate" at the end of that resolution. Obviously, is that what you're suggesting?
Well, basically, you'd be funded district-wide, and officers can sort out where that goes to. So
it would read out a $50,000 loan to be funded district-wide to undertake the work.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that.
Councillor Thompson, would you be happy? Okay, yes. Any other comment? Okay, I'll put it with that new motion. Those in favour say aye. Those against, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, now moving on to item 7.1. First of all, the ratification of our submission to the exposure draft of the National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity. So this is a submission that has gone. We don't often have a lot of lead time for these things, and this was one that's come to us for ratification. So anyone would like to move? Councillor Williams, thank you. Councillor Percival, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, a couple of things. We can't not ratify it. What I hope when we submit is that we perhaps emphasise certain points more than others. I note on page 53, I know that Victoria sent out, invited us all to comment on this, and I know some of us did. And I certainly argued that we should be pressing for public funding on the basis that it's a core public good, that clearly benefiting protecting the environment and Indigenous biodiversity is an ecological, environmental and social good and should essentially be funded as such rather than be a private cost. Now, we're saying that there should be equitable funding arrangements that should be established at the national and regional level, but I would personally prefer us to be a bit more emphatic than that. The other matter that does concern me, I wish we'd had a conversation about this as councillors, but on pages 57 and 63, which is part of our submission, there's references on 57 to how a Maori worldview could be integrated and what concepts of Māori can be equated with metrics. Now, the difficulty with that one and what's on page 63, which talks about how we need to develop tools and prompts for considering the Māori of a place as part of the monitoring regime. I just think on the part of the government, this is imposed spirituality. And it creates a potential conflict between systems, a clash between, if you like, science and faith. Some people would say that intangibles have a Māori, a life force, an essence, a spirit. Other people would say they're a combination of atoms, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. And this notion of introducing 2 entirely different management concepts, I think, is potentially really problematic. And as I say, it's imposed spirituality. We wouldn't demand that people follow a Christian belief or insist that everyone subscribes to an afterlife. And I'm not sure that we should be actually making policy at a national level that introduces intangible concepts that can't be tested. I mean, this is like trying to get a marriage of C.S. Lewis and Stephen Dawkins. It's, you know, you can't fuse matters of science and matters of faith. There's potential conflict between the two that I think the policy statement should avoid, not essentially incorporate. And I'd like to see us a bit more forceful on that matter, to be honest.
Well, I think we are asking, and submission is asking, you know, how the worldview can be better integrated within and reported on in future monitoring frameworks. So it's asking for clarity about what they mean and how they intend to make one fit with the other. You know, I don't know enough to say it can't be done, but you know, I think it's fair that we ask how is it proposed to be done, because we don't know and we're not sure what exactly its meaning. I think that life force and so on, I mean, well, whilst you're taking a spiritual meaning into it, I think it's also you know, a belief in health and that side of things. So it's trying to take it from something that's not as tangible for us, at least, and make it more tangible. So asking the question, I think, is the right thing to do, as opposed to just saying it won't work, because we need to understand how it would work.
I absolutely accept that, and I think you're right about 57. I was more concerned about the reference we make on page 63 to the need for developing tools and prompts for considering the Māori of a place as part of the monitoring regime. Now, that treats the Māori of a place as a fact. Now, you're right. Māori does address issues of health and quality, but it is also, as I understand it, it also pertains to intangibilities, to matters of, if you like, the character or mana of an element. So I repeat what I've said. I just think there's potential problems there that the policy statement should avoid rather than incorporate.
well, hopefully we'll get some answers from the government about how they intend to deal with it. Okay. Right, any other comments? Okay, I'll put it, those in favour say aye. And those against, it's carried. Item 7.2 is the ratification of our submission to on the water services entity bill. And this one we've asked to speak to, and there's options around where we can do that, going around the country, and we've asked 2 hours in Dunedin just because the timing worked out best for that one. So happy to, if anyone got any questions on it? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, sorry, just a very quick comment. Again, I wouldn't recant or retract this, but I would like to see the emphasis when we submit placed on some of the comments, the specific matters we address. I was a bit troubled in that introductory paragraphs to read that WDC supports the government's goal to provide communities with safe and affordable water, etc. I mean, that implies that that the goal is unique to them. And it's not, and never has been. I mean, we've worked very hard and spent an awful lot of money to actually provide safe and affordable water services and encourage good public health and environmental outcomes. So, I mean, when we do submit, I'd just like us to say that it's our goal as much as theirs. And we still totally think that they've come to the they've trying to solve the issue, or the solution is not appropriate for the magnitude of the problem. And that's what we do say, that we're opposed to the service delivery model. And that's the key message, I think.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much the start to any discussion that we have on it. And, you know, we're faced with a government that's determined to, push this through. The thing that we need to do, as much as we oppose it, is okay, if it's going to be forced on councils, then we want to try and make sure that it is as workable as possible for us. And there's definitely some problems with what's happening. The latest is that we've got staff members who a portion of their work might be involved in Three Waters. So say someone in finance who's working, a quarter of their job might be in water, and they may be taken off us. And this is part of the problem. When I say taken, I mean they have the ability to transfer to the new entities, and doesn't matter that 3/4 of their job was actually doing other things for us. So this is a really challenging time for local government, and I think we just need to actually keep reinforcing that to central government, that this reform is going to change councils a lot and our ability to do things and take away capacity. And we're talking about things like stormwater in Waitaki. I mean, the problem there is that if we don't have any water engineers and so on doing some of this work, we basically hamstrung. We have to use consultants, or we have to try and find even more water people and hire them back into the organisation. So it's not an easy topic. There's a good number of reasons why we're opposed to the reforms as they have been proposed, and we need to make sure we are making those points to them in their verbal submission. Anything else in that? Someone like to move? We accept that, or adopt that. Councillor Kingan, thank you. Councillor Hopkins. Those in favour say aye. And against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of our public session. So we're just going to move into public excluded, and we've got some minutes and 3 items in there. So someone like to move, we go into public excluded. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Williams, thank you. Those in favour say aye. Against? It's carried. So thank you very much, everyone who's watched the live stream. It's a fairly brief one today, but yeah, take